Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey. Welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. Karl Bryan coming at you. I'm here today, sans Road Dog, but my boy has texted me a few questions here this morning, and so therefore, I'm going to pump off those questions, folks, and see how I do without our boy Road Dog. Okay, so let me open up my text here. Okay, question number one. What's one thing you've said on our podcast that has got a ton of feedback and that you feel like you should reinforce? There we go. Points to Road Dog for a good first question. There you go. What would I say? A lot of feedback. I said, so the definition of stupidity is hurting other people while hurting yourself. That's something I said not too long ago that a few people bring up. Don't know that that's top of the list, by the way, but that's the first one that comes to mind. Definitely one that I say regularly. So I'm going to kind of just riff here, folks. We don't have Road Dog, so I'm allowed to just riff. He can't cut me off, so I'm just going to go. One that I've said a lot that I feel like consistently I hear kind of back is the biggest problem you have in life and business is that you don't know what you want. Okay, what do you got to do? You got to sit down, blank piece of paper, pen in your hand. I believe that that's going to work a lot more powerfully than, your phone, an iPad, said electronic device. So you got to have some quiet time. You got to sit down and you got to clearly define what you want. And again, I almost always follow that up with, it's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. But I got to tell you, I think you'll be rewarded wildly for doing so. You got to clearly define what you want. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So I think that that's something you should do. And that would be towards the top of the list. You know what else? Look, we've talked about Flywheels lately. Maybe won't go too deep on this one because we've done this a number of times here over the last number of podcasts, but Flywheels, training your mind to think in flywheels is, again, one of the most, I always say, like about accounting. I co-wrote a book on accounting for business coaches. One of the things that I say there is training your mind to think in percentages is a super hack. Okay. Like your client's got 20% net margins and you increase them to 30%. The naked eye sees that and sees a 10% improvement, but it is not. That is a 50% improvement. Right? So because 20 to 22 would be 10, 20 to 24 would be 20, 20 to 26 is 30, 20 to 30 is a 50% improvement. So training your mind, I say that because I think training your mind to start to think in flywheels is a very powerful exercise. And it's one of those things, it's not going to come naturally, I would imagine. Doesn't come naturally to me. But remember, there's studying and then training. Studying is listening to podcasts, doing the YouTube video, taking the course, sitting in the room, classroom style. But training is doing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes instinctual, right? So if you do start to train your mind in flywheels and you do it over and over and over, and again, guess what? It's going to start to become a little bit more naturally, a little more natural until it becomes natural. So if I were to give you an example, just think like your life's outcome, right? Thoughts become words, words become actions, action become habits, habits become character, and character will define your life's outcome, right? So if I were to take that and turn it into a flywheel, so I can do that very quickly. You've got your life's outcome, and then you've got like thoughts at 2:00, and then words at 4:00, actions at 6:00, habits, character, and then your life's outcome. It might not work 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. But at the end of the day, you put it around. I call it a clock instead of a flywheel, because when it works in reverse, it goes counterclockwise and kind of eats itself. There's a lot of business models out there that are basically broken before they start. And effectively they reverse on themselves, and they wonder why they can't get past that elusive 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, etc., because they get a glass ceiling and the business model is often not lending itself. Anyway, so thinking in flywheel, and again, for a business coach, the ultimate flywheel, or a really good flywheel to train yourself on, it's advertising, right? Remember, 90% of small businesses ultimately wind up, okay? Why are those statistics those statistics? Because the greater business environment is often bringing them things that are sexy and cool and attractive to them, but they don't solve the real problem. Okay. So advertising would be one of those. Well, you tell me, maybe I'm wrong. Right. And before I continue this, I don't want you to think that I am not a fan of advertising. As you listen to me, I can tell you that I've got ads going everywhere. Right. But so advertising to profit is a superpower. But the problem is the chiropractor, the dentist, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the way that they are advertising is basically a blown up business card with name of the company at the top, service, quality, dependability in the middle, their phone number, and their web address at the bottom. They've got no interrupt, no engage, no educate, no offer. Those are the 4 steps that we train folks on to install a marketing system, a turnkey system. You got interrupt, engage, educate, and then offer. So anyway, in the instance of advertising, the business owner is looking for freedom. That's 12 o'clock. Okay. Why or how? They're trying to get leads so they can get hot prospects, so they can get clients, they can get revenue, so they can get profit, so they can get cash, so they can build a big business, so they can build wealth, so that they can achieve freedom. And the problem is that the ad often gets them further away from freedom, because they run the ad, spend 12 grand a year, and then it doesn't bring them in the result. And by the way, if we go to the result, what's freedom for them? Freedom for them is taking their family to Disneyland for 2 weeks. Well, how much does it cost to go to Disneyland for 2 weeks with your family? Okay. And let's just use $12,000 as the arbitrary number, because it is the most expensive place on earth, by the way. But so if 12 grand could get the family to Disneyland and the ad's not working, couldn't they just turn the ad off, take the family to Disneyland and achieve the result, and effectively let's call that short-term freedom. You know what I mean? But they can all of a sudden, get the goal. Anyways, and then by the way, if you agree with that, an undertaking for you might be phone 10 people who are advertising a day as a conversation starter, not as a sales pitch. You don't sell them advertising. You're not selling them coaching. You're not trying to sell them into anything. You're calling as like a service to the community. Like, you're helping them, right? Remember, you don't have a client problem. You don't have a money problem. You have a refusal to help people before they pay you problem, right? So if you just called them and explained what I just explained, that ad is never going to work. And be cautious here, because in some cases they think it's the most beautiful ad ever, right? So tread kindly, but just explain basically that. And if you did that 10 times a day and you did that for 90 days straight, do you think you might find some people that say, wow, I've been looking, you know what I mean? Like, do you think that might lend itself to them saying, can you help me? And often it will not, but guess what? Often it will. And if you study on it and then train on it, do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, do you think you might be able to move the needle, get a little bit better, and then organically start turning those folks into the clients? Anyway, so flywheel, I'm going to leave that there. What is something else that I have said? This is one. I probably haven't heard this a ton back, but I certainly have heard this back and mentioned on different calls. And I can tell you where to look, but I can tell you where to look, but I can't tell you what to see. Right. So again, it's the same with your clients, by the way. Like, how do you help them with what to see and where to look, you might be asking? The way you do that is by asking questions. Thinking is nothing more than asking and then answering questions to yourself. So by asking questions, you direct their thinking. All right. So again, listen to Tony Robbins speak for over an hour, and you're going to see that 60% of the time he's asking questions. And he's just asking them very generally, but that gets you thinking. He's effectively directing your thinking. And then if you think of hypnosis as an example, like that's a very, very powerful dynamic. So, show them where to look, but don't tell them what to see. The manner in which to do that is to get good at asking and answering questions. And by the way, Profit Acceleration software, my software, what is the foundation of it? It's a Q&A process, right? Like it's just, if we created a market dominating position for you, I think that might move the needle. Let me ask you a few questions about how you are, currently going about this. And then you ask them like, okay, better, maybe that they give you a real templated example. If I say, do you have a business plan? You say no. Do you have a marketing plan? You say no. Do you have a marketing budget? You say no. And then I ask like 50 questions and you give me 40 to 45 no's. It's insanely against the grain. Am I explaining that properly? Probably not, but you know what I mean? Like it goes against the flow of the conversation for them to say, nah, look, I've got this totally under control. I'm doing a great job. I don't need your help. Right. So then at the end of that, basically it's like, look, do you want a little bit of help with this? They're going to say, absolutely. So when you ask 5 powerful questions directed towards market dominating position, it's like, if you think you did that, do you think it might move the needle on your business? Organically, they're going to say, yeah, that's obvious. So then you say, well, how much do you think that will impact your business over the next 12 months? And then they give you a number or give you a percentage. You populate the software with that. And guess what? Moves the needle on their revenues. It definitely moves the needle on their profit. Remember, profit is the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. So next thing you know, you get yourself a client. Okay, so that's definitely one. I show you where to look, not what to see. Here's one. This is probably the one that I've heard. Maybe Flywheels and this one. If you look at the average prominent, quote unquote, government worker, what you're going to be looking at is a 70-year-old who owns assets, stocks, and real estate, let's call it, right? Okay. So now if you look at fiscal policy decisions over the last 20 years made by your government and the people that I just described, which are 70 years old and own assets like stocks and real estate, guess what you're going to find? All of fiscal policy that has been approved and implemented over the last 20 years, all wildly benefit who? A 70-year-old approaching retirement with assets like stocks and real estate. Now, what's the result of that? If it's not painfully obvious already, look, a 20-something-year-old has never been more disadvantaged than they are right now when it comes to building wealth. How are they ever going to be able to afford a home, as an example? Right? So anyway, so that one, yeah, that's that one. I don't know if we can do anything about it, but at the end of the day, knowing the problem can, it can be pretty powerful. Again, I'm going to show you where to look. I'm not going to tell you what to see. So I would say that. And by the way, but what's the number one way to build wealth? Like there's stocks, real estate, and business, the 3 ways to make money. Stocks, you're betting on somebody else. Real estate, you need 10 years or a boom, totally out of your control. What's the 3rd way? Business. And by the way, you might want to add crypto in there, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. What's the number 1 way? What are the richest people in the world? What do they invest in? What do they do? And that would be business. So the flip side of that, and the good news of that, for the 20-somethings out there, and if you have a 20-something, son, daughter, nephew, niece, grandson, granddaughter, etc., building a business has never been easier than it is right now. The problem with that is about 5% of the population start a company. So you're then just, we're helping 5% of the 20 somethings. We're not helping the vast majority of them. Anyway, so that's what I would say there. Um, Here's so actually here's something I haven't said in a while. But I had a conversation with it literally last night. And this is one that I said back in the day, and it is a little bit of a needle mover. So if you've ever watched the movie The Founder, it's the story of McDonald's and Ray Kroc and the McDonald's boys. Great movie. And again, I have watched it. I'm not even going to tell you how many times I've watched it because I'll embarrass myself. It's kind of my go-to if I can't sleep, turn on the TV. And there's a few movies that I go to, like Jobs, the story of Steve Jobs, and McDonald's, The Founder, is one of them. Anyway, so you can literally, and then, by the way, the reason why I recommend it, I think that it's a great movie. It's got tons of business lessons right in there, right in there. And by the way, also, I encourage you to read the book, which I believe is also, I don't think it's called The Founder. I can't think it off the top of my head. Anyways, great book. So, okay, here is the needle moving lesson, amongst many of them, but the one that I took away from the movie and the book and ultimately the story of Ray Kroc, and that is front of house, back of house. Okay. So originally, like McDonald's, Ray Kroc franchised it. When you buy a franchise, what do you need? The answer is some money. So who was he looking for? He's looking for people with money. What was the result of that? It was people with money would invest in McDonald's. And remember, McDonald's was a franchise and he wanted a very he was dogmatic with the systematic approach. And then what would happen? He would go visit McDonald's and these guys would hire people to work there, manager, etc. And all of a sudden they would have chicken, they'd have a chicken burger up on the menu. They'd be putting lettuce on the burgers, etc. Okay. And that's not the way that he wanted it done, but that's, they were reactionary as opposed to following the system. They were kind of making it up as they went. So what's the solution? He realized that what he was looking for was a married couple. Okay. So think just, mom and dad, and mom front of house, dad back of house, mom front of house, dad back of house. So business lesson for you. As a business coach, if you can coach, you can't sell. And if you can sell, you can't coach, right? A little bit of an exaggeration, but I'm pretty darn close. Okay. So if you're a really good salesperson and you love the kill, you need a staff member or a business partner. Hardest ship to steer is a partnership, by the way. So I would go staff member before I go partnership. Partnership is easier short-term, harder long-term. Staff can be a solution to that, right? But end of the day, you're really good front of house. Guess what? You need somebody back of house doing coaching. So the front of house is selling the coaching and the back of house is doing the coaching. Normally those two skill sets are not found in the same individual. So you might want to be thinking about bringing on somebody front of house to go do the sales, and then you do the coaching. And then in the other instance, you're on the front end doing the killing, doing the, selling, finding, nurturing, closing, etc. the coaches. And then you've got the coach on the back end. Instinctively, I know what you might be thinking is that, yeah, but when I find the client and I convert them, they want to work with me. I got to tell you, that's in your head times a lot. Really easy to do the Passover, and all of a sudden your coach is showing up doing the coaching, assuming they're really good at it. X factor, you gotta train them, and they need to be good. But anyway, so that front of house, back of house, apparently it worked out pretty well for McDonald's, and you want to be thinking about something along the same lines. I don't know. That's all I can. Here's one more. I think I might not have said this on the podcast. I wrote this in an email. May have said it on the podcast, but anyways, about this got a lot of feedback, and this wasn't that long ago. People make rules for betas and then they break rules for alphas. Like, what does somebody say? Look, I never buy without speaking to my wife. I never buy without speaking to my husband. I never buy on the spot. right? You got to, if you're hearing that, I got to tell you, you haven't positioned yourself as the alpha, quote unquote, on the level, the authority as well as you could have. Because I got to tell you, like, people say that, and then what do? They literally buy on the spot when that dynamic is right. Right. So you got to position yourself as the alpha, like nothing to prove, nothing to hide, in control, but not trying to control. Right. Nothing to prove, nothing to hide, in control, not trying to control. That's kind of the state, I'm going to say. That's the mental frame that you want to transfer. Remember, you can't transfer something that you don't own, right? So you've got to own that, nothing to prove, nothing to hide, in control, but not trying to control, in order to be able to transfer it into the other individual. What's that going to do? That is going to create a dynamic where you're going to be an alpha and they will break rules on your behalf, as opposed to the other. It's think back in high school when the girlfriend cheated on the boyfriend or the boyfriend cheated on the girlfriend. Better example there may be the girlfriend breaking or cheating on the boyfriend, but the individual that she cheats with, generally speaking, is going to be kind of somebody who has that alpha state in that alpha dynamics going on. Anyways, okay, so there you go. So here's the next question. This is what I think I need Road Dog here for. But anyways, he said, I read something recently. In your opinion, LeBron or MJ is the GOAT of basketball? So I don't know why he's asking this, to be honest with you. Don't know that I got a great answer. But first of all, Jordan is somebody who I hold. I think that he's not just, he was obviously unbelievable at basketball, but he just had this insatiable appetite to compete. And I think that created the dynamic where, he's a force of nature. I mean, the guy, he's a billionaire, many times over, no doubt, and has gone on to be insanely successful in business and literally owns a basketball team, right? To go from playing basketball on the basketball team to owning the basketball team is something that is ridiculously rare, that only a select few have pulled off, the Magic Johnsons and the Michael Jordans. So that so that's going to put MJ so far ahead of, and no doubt LeBron, he might go on to do some great things. But look, Jordan was the face of basketball when it had never been more popular. And LeBron is the face of basketball, and I don't know that it's ever been less popular than it is now. And by the way, if you may or may not agree with that, but I don't know, look at the stats, look at the data, you tell me what it says, but I think it's going to tell you exactly what I just said. You ask, do you wear Jordans? Are you wearing Jordans? Do you have Jordans? You don't ask, do you have LeBrons? Right? So I don't know. My world. So if you go into my office in Canada, you will see, you'll see my family photos and whatnot. And I've got two photos. I have one photo, which is Steve Jobs in and amongst my family. Sadly, not sure they're too happy about that, but that's just somebody who I put right up there. Again, just, and was he the greatest human in the world? Look, that's up for debate. That's not the reason he's on my wall. He's on my wall because he's just inspiration on steroids. Why? Name of my company is focus.com. There's a very good reason for that. There was a time when I needed to get focused, and no joke, I woke up and I literally bought the domain name focus.com, on the back of going, I have got to get focused. Actually, there's a story about, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, where Bill Gates' dad sat with them. He gave them each a piece of paper and he said, I want you to write down one word on why you have been successful, as you've been. Why are you so successful? Don't trade notes. Don't look at each other. Warren, I want you to write it down. Bill, I want you to write it down. They both write down, a word on a piece of paper, one word, gave it to Bill Gates' dad, who was a very successful entrepreneur, by the way. And guess what? They both wrote down the exact same word. Guess what that word was? Focus. So that's the reason why Steve Jobs is amongst my family. And the other photo, which is what I was trying to get to, is guess who? None other than Michael Jordan. So there you go. So that's the answer to that. And I don't even know if that provides any value, but hopefully. Okay, got to give him my Zen thought. Is my third question here. Let's say, you know what? I did some work. I interviewed Tom Cavanaugh not long ago, and I did a little bit of work with him. He's a very talented dude. Um, and he taught me a lot, but one that's pretty cool is that you use your left hand to brush your teeth, right? And what it's going to trigger, it's going to trigger your subconscious mind, let's just say, right? So you brush your teeth, put your keys in the door, type with your left hand, write with your left hand, right? And effectively what happened, you just trigger the left or right side of your brain can, so basically it's triggering your subconscious mind. And all of a sudden you just start operating at a slightly higher level. Things go a little bit deeper for you. So as an example, try this. Okay. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Okay. Get your subconscious mind working with and for you, and then stare in a mirror and say, I love you. Use your name, Karl, I love you. Karl, I love you. Karl, I love you. And say that 10 times. And then tell me how you feel at the end of that. That would be an example. So anyway, so that, yeah, it was kind of some powerful stuff. And it kind of got me, thinking. And one of the things that came to me, and I may or may not have done that this morning, by the way, I might have just gone beta in your mind instead of alpha, by the way, but hey, that's okay. We're going to keep rocking. So Karl, don't work towards an easy future or an easy life. When a successful man works to make, quote unquote, life easy for himself, the universe has a weird way of asking for the parts back. And I actually heard that from Dan Sullivan, and he said it differently, but fundamentally that's what I took away from it. So when a successful man starts looking to make life easy for himself, the universe asks for the parts back. And it's wild how many times I've seen this play out, right? So the solution to that, you ask me, because you may be thinking, she's like an easy life. Like, isn't that what I'm looking for, right? Rather than working towards an easy life, this is what really came to me, right? Like, work towards not being phased or bothered by almost anything. That, in my opinion, is a leader. And by the way, all of my first companies that I started all had leader in the name. So again, that's a word for me that means something, along with focused. So translation, moral of the story, don't work towards an easy life. Work towards not being phased or bothered by almost anything. Like needing nothing attracts everything. What's that? There's a saying, to the man who has everything, more is given. To the man who has nothing, everything is taken, right? It's weird, but it's a universal principle, right? Like it's like 80-20. It's not an option. That's not an opinion, right? It's an absolute fact. So it's a universal law that you can't expect. You can't escape it. I can't escape it. Road Dogg can't escape it. And neither can your clients. You want to use it in your favor. Remember, needing nothing attracts everything. You want to work towards, not having an easy life, but not being phased by anything that happens. And picture Michael Jordan on the basketball court. And by the way, LeBron James, to be clear, I want to make sure LeBron James is an incredibly talented basketball player, and I would never take that away from him. But when you talk GOAT, I don't even know that he's in the top 3. Smarter people. I'm not a basketball guy, so ask people much smarter than I. And that might be you, by the way. Maybe you disagree wildly, but he's wildly talented. But Michael Jordan's the guy. But just think of Michael Jordan on the basketball court, right? And again, there's a famous quote out there. I don't know what it is, but he I missed, like X amount of shots, X amount of game-winning shots, but it never fazed him. He was never hesitant to take the next one, never hesitant to put himself in the position to take the next one, never hesitant to demand the ball in the last 5 seconds and shoot from, well beyond the basket to, sink the 3-pointer or whatever. Anyway, so hopefully maybe that's got some power, but remember, universal law, like 80-20. When the man who has everything gets given more, and the man who has nothing, has everything taken away. These are These are universal principles. Universal principles, what do I know about them? You want to have them working in your favor. Last question. Speak to me about new ops versus improvement. Ooh. Okay. Um, people will respond to buy new opportunities over improvement times 100 is the frame that I would give you, right? So what's improvement, you ask? I'm going to increase I'm a digital marketer and I'm going to increase traffic to your website by 20%. You've got XYZ. I'm going to increase your revenues by 20%. You've got XYZ profits. I'm going to improve your profits by 20%, right? What we talk about is installing our small business operating system. That is the framework of profit acceleration software, what's called the Jumpstart 12, where you reverse engineer the biggest companies in the world, and they've got the 12, they've got the exact same 12 areas dialed in, no exception. So by the way, you buy Tony Robbins' highest level program, Dan Kennedy's highest level program, Jay Abraham's highest level program. Guess what? The Jumpstart 12, the exact same 12 areas are dialed in, right? So improvement, I'm going to improve XYZ by 10%, 20%, 30%. That will not move the needle, give you that alpha frame that I talked about earlier. What will is they buy new opportunities. What did I say? By like 100x. So a new opportunity is a new career. It's a new instead of a better website and an increased traffic on the website, it's a new website. It's a new funnel. It's introducing a funnel that they don't have. It's a new turnkey marketing system with interrupt, engage, educate, offer as the framework that you install. It's a new Facebook campaign. It's a new joint venture partnership that you're going to help them solidify. It's a new way to reduce costs. Remember, what Jeff Bezos says is the way you want to think about reducing costs is finding a new way to do things, right? That's the higher level frame. Just going and, shaving expenses, by the way, which is insanely powerful, should absolutely be done. You negotiate or just put a line straight through it. But a new framework is going to be significantly more exciting, a new way to increase prices, a new way to separate yourself with a market dominating position. So the way we train a market dominating position, it's the way that we do it in the Jumpstart 12. It's a unique selling proposition, but how it's different is it isolates the ideal client and then solves the biggest problem for the perfect avatar. Right? So not just a unique selling proposition, which will help you stand out, which is way better than not standing out, but a market dominating position solves the biggest problem for the ideal client. You asked me for an example. Okay, McDonald's would be perfect. They invented fast food where it's food in 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes. If you've got a daycare, if you line up 100 daycares for me and I say, what is the major hot button of your ideal client? They will say price and location. I say, why? They say, that's the first two questions everybody asks. 2 seconds of homework will find that accountability, because you're speaking to mom makes the decision on average for the daycare that they choose, not dad. So basically, accountability and then missing their kids wildly is the hot button. So imagine if you owned a daycare and you implemented a web watch. What's a web watch going to do? First of all, if I'm able to watch you, looking after my kids in the common room throughout the day, no doubt that's a higher level of accountability. Not to mention, I'm missing my kids wildly, and I could just be driving down the road, pull over, whip open my iPad, log into the daycare's website, and now I can see my kids playing with other kids, my kids playing together, my kid building blocks, my kids socializing, etc. It can kind of just it gives you a little bit of relief. Like, you're able to watch your kids throughout the day. So translation, a web watch would isolate, the ideal client avatar and then go to their biggest problem and then solve it. So another way, like you say, if you have a daycare, you could create an accelerated learning center. I got a client sold us daycares for $10 million. What was it? It was an accelerated learning center. But an accelerated learning center, although powerful, it doesn't solve the biggest problem for the ideal client unless the ideal client is saying, I need my kid to go into grade 1 with a grade 2 reading, writing, and arithmetic ability. If they're saying that, and that's the major hot button, then the Accelerated Learning Center would be a market dominating position. If it's not, then it's a unique selling proposition. But again, understanding that standing out is paramount to success. But when you isolate the biggest problem for the ideal client, it can be a needle mover on steroids and really, ridiculously more profitable business that is systematized and that can exit, that can sell for a sexy multiple, because it's going to be it's just a better business than the competition. Anyway, so a new MDP, introducing that to them when they don't have it is going to be more exciting than improving the one that they have, right? New additional products and services. Again, McDonald's got, the McRib, the McPizza back in the day. They've got the McFlurry, etc. What are the additional products and services that are going to be synergistic to their current model? That's going to move the needle. New profit centers, new mindset, new operating system. So anyway, so when you're speaking to people, trying to close them into high-end coaching and consulting, I would encourage you to be isolating new opportunities and speaking in new opportunities. And I would dare say that will also organically help you create that alpha frame that I talked about earlier. Because again, people make rules for betas and then break rules for alphas. This is going to help you become more of an alpha in their mind, where their subconscious mind is kind of going, wow, this is the individual that I need to be speaking to. Anyway, so that's what and then he said, I got to go with my one thing here. So that's the last question. My one thing I'm going to tell you every morning, I want you to wake up and I want you to follow Tom Cavanaugh's advice. And that is to brush your teeth with your left hand. And then watch how all of a sudden you just start triggering things in that little brain of yours in a meaningful way. So I'm going to, it's a powerful exercise. Sounds possibly ridiculous. Actually, no, I don't think it does. It's even like he says, video games. Kids playing video games is powerful. Why? Because they're using their left and their right hands. So it's actually a good exercise for children to play video games. Where, by the way, all things in moderation, including moderation, is what Buddha says. So too much video game is very bad. Playing video games can actually be really, really powerful for kids. And why? Because again, they're using their left and their right hand, and they're basically using both sides of their brain, and that has proven to be very, very powerful. Maybe just a second one thing, but the successful man who works to make life easy normally ends in a horrific result, if not a bad result. So what you want to do, and what I want to encourage you to do, is rather than trying to frame up things that they become easy, work yourself towards a frame of you're the person who's never fazed, never bothered by almost anything that comes their way. I just think that if you were to define leadership, I think that might be it. Okay. So before I close, I'm a mad Toronto Maple Leafs fan, right? So again, you may or may not follow hockey, but if you do, the Leafs are a little bit like the Yankees of baseball, where you love them or you hate them. But our coach, so we're in the middle of the playoffs and looking real good for the first time in a long time. And the coach, right? The team has adopted the personality of the coach. And the coach is just stoic. He's never fazed. He's never bothered. They win, they lose, they get a horrific call. They win a game 8-0. He's just kind of steady Eddie on steroids. And like, I think of him. That was part of why. Anyways, I was just, so I think of him there. Never fazed, never bothered. And I think that is a really, really good frame for you as you want to become a great leader. What's a great business coach? A great leader. I think that could be a powerful frame. So there you go, folks. Get using your left or your right hand, depending upon if you're left or right-handed. And frame it up so you never become phased, never become bothered. That's what I got for you, folks. Appreciate you. We'll see you on the next podcast. Toodaloo. Bye-bye.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.